I always forget how big of the.
Oh, and we are live. I don't know how many people are gonna still be around though. I think we kept them waiting a little too long, brother. Got five on there. Got five on there.
Got five on it. Anybody remember that song?
Sheesh. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, man. This Pistons season has been an interesting one for the start. It's like when I look at Cade and what he's starting to do, kind of picking it up, kind of looking to attack and things of that nature. I'm seeing more or less a player that is not necessarily indicative of his team. And that's one of the hardest things I think of covering this team this year is we're seeing some of the individual highs and ups. And because we've never dealt with a rebuild of this magnitude where they literally tore down to the studs and we got what we've been asking for forever, tear down to the studs and we will support even a loser, right? That's what we said. If it's the right picks, if it looks like it's headed in the right way, that's what we're going to do. Now, all of a sudden, we got that. We're in this position. We have the players. We got the draft picks. We got the cash. And we're kind of in this position of losing. But Cade Cunningham is starting to look like this guy that deserves more respect. But the reason why I don't think he's really getting it is because people go right back to this whole that the Pistons are a winning thing. What's his effect on winning, this, that, and the other? Now, look, Steve, you're a basketball savant, man. You're a basketball savant. As it relates to Cade, as it relates to this Pistons team, I'm going to get into whatever this team needs to do to be fixed because it doesn't start anywhere with what Cade needs to do, man. He's been on it. You know, why does Cade transcend what this team's record is? So we've had players like this, right? Didn't LeBron go through this? And did anybody necessarily question the greatness or things of that nature as it related to who Cade Cunningham is? Because this week, a lot of our platforms have been on this notion of who is Cade? Is he a star? I want to get your thoughts on it, brother.
Yeah, I was tweeting at somebody who was talking about his struggles and like, oh, this is the number one overall pick, blah. So I started looking into it, and I know it was like KD. Who else? And it's like KD was the big example. There have been superstars like this that in the first 4 games of their second year, they didn't shoot fantastic, and then the rest of the year picked it up. And then right after we went on this Twitter exchanges when he started to blow up against the Warriors and against the Bucks. This is somebody that is sharpening his sword, is what I keep saying too. In particular area, he's been sharpening his sword and is the most difficult area on the court to succeed at, and that's in the mid-range. People have already been talking about how great his mid-range is, and I can give you some shooting splits here in just a second, because he is shooting at a ridiculous level. Like, I don't think people really give him enough credit for what he's been shooting at. I believe it's 33 of, 69. Yeah, no, 34 of 69, which is over 50% from mid-range, which is like Chris Paul territory. And there's another tweet. I'll have to dig it up in the process of this, live stream tonight. But there was somebody that tweeted out that Cade actually in the last 17 games or whatever into this year is shooting the exact same percentage from the mid-range as Chris Paul. Again, this is in year 2. So yeah, like you're saying, where Cade doesn't necessarily reflect the success of this team, he is sharpening his sword in the most difficult area on the court. And honestly, he's mainly been attacking on the strong side. Last game against the Bucks, when he wasn't really feeling it in the first quarter, the second quarter, and then in the third quarter, he actually went to the weak side and hit a couple of shots. So I expect that to be kind of the next side, is attacking both sides of the basket. Still not getting foul calls. I think that's the thing. I'm not sure how he's going to change his approach because he's still not really driving directly at the hoop. There are a lot of those kind of runner, floater, hook shots, scoop shots where he's just left or right of the basket. Those are going to be really difficult to get foul calls on, right? Because if you're not really contacting the center or the defender who's in front of you and they're more in the trail position or kind of to your side, that's going to be super difficult to get foul calls on. So I hope that he changes his approach in attacking a little bit. without limiting those shots, because that is another shot that's impossible to defend once he perfects it.
Yeah, it's something, when the Pistons were looking at who to draft, and all the speculation was going on about, is it Cade? Is it Jalen Green? Is it Cade? Is it Jalen Green? Is it Cade? Is it Jalen Green? Is it Evan Mobley? Every now and then. You know what I mean? The one reason why I absolutely was salivating at the fact of being able to have Cade Cunningham in a Pistons jersey was because of his mid-range game. And at the time, that wasn't something that a lot of people were talking about. I just noticed, hey, whenever he gets to that spot, it seems like he does it. It didn't seem like it was something he made an ample part of his game, but you could tell in college, whenever he did it, he was good at it. And a lot of times it seemed like he was avoiding it because the mid-range game isn't necessarily what preached. It wasn't something in this generation of basketball. Even in Rip Hamilton's day of basketball, it wasn't really preached. That's why he was signified and looked at as he was as a specialist. Him and Tony McDyess with that 16-footer, Rasheed Wallace. These were kind of like, the last of those guys who would do things in a mid-range of sorts. Okay, I see you.
Yeah, so I shared that screen with you, or the tweet with you. I don't know if you want to share the screen or if I have permission to share the screen.
Yeah, definitely go ahead and share it. I'll pop it up.
Let me do that. Present, share screen. Where's it at?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, y'all seen it here?
Yeah.
So yeah, Cade Muse, shout out Cade Muse. Since February 24, 2022, this is Cade and CP3, 64 of 134, exactly the same percentage as 47.8. And then look at that shot chart. Look at all that red and orange in the mid-range. And even the furthest part above the arc on three-point, he's at 38%. Everything else will come around. He's not taking corner threes either. That's the thing I think that isn't being talked about enough. The corner three is the easiest shot in all of basketball, and he's doing all this without taking the easiest shot in basketball. Still has to work on finishing at the rim, obviously, but it seems that this season he's been doing a little bit better at that. I guess I can give you numbers here since I have his shooting up too, but just wanted to give you guys an idea of how great of a mid-range shooter Cade already is, CP3 level.
Yeah. Oh, looks like we lost Steve, man. We're definitely getting back in there. But yeah, what he was actually talking about is so real. It's so real, man. When I was looking at like I said, to go back to Cade in the pre-draft analysis and all those things, that mid-range was something that was just so keen. The reason why I was keen on it, as most Pistons fans probably would be, was because of the fact that we had Richard Hamilton here, and we knew how effective that mid-range was in an era of basketball. In an era of basketball where they're telling us the mid-range isn't as effective, don't take that shot. Why would you take a long two when you could take a three? Well, we have a perspective that shows if you have an efficient person who can hit that mid-range, there's a lot of defenses out there that don't know how to defend that. You get the big man that is hesitant to even step up, especially when we get like Jalen Duren going. I think that he needs a little bit more seasoning before he understands that whole lob game, sealing out. He's one of those guys who I don't think he understands. Duren, you're 6'11" and 250. You know what I mean? Though he plays big in certain regards, I don't think he realizes, bro, don't respect these people next to you. Who gives a frick? Push him down. You're bigger. Dunk on his head. Jump over him. Seal him out. Make the space on the other side so they can drop the ball in. I think as he gets that, it's going to be absolutely monstrous. I think that Marvin Bagley will help with that maturation as he gets back. As you can see, Cade and Marvin, what they're doing and such. I saw some clips earlier of the Pistons trying to set some screens for Cade. Steve.
Yeah, that was my last point. Was like, do you know how terrible the screen setting is on this team right now? It's part of the Killian struggle too, which I know we're going to get into. Like Killian, that was his MO. He's a pick and roll ball handler. You need to run a lot of pick and roll. Cade as well. This is not some mega athlete, even though he can create an ISO and is a good ball handler. The optimal thing you want is him in pick and roll and running pick and roll, right? So they haven't been able to do that as much as I am. Marvin Bagley, that's what he excels at, is being pick and roll, being a lob threat. And Jalen Duren has been the best of the options as a screen setter, but he's a rookie, still kind of learning that stuff. He wasn't asked to do that a ton at Memphis. So this is something that he's still learning how to do and perfect that thing. Beef stew against still somebody that's learning how to perfect this. And let it be lost on no one, the Pistons have only been playing with 2 centers this entire time, Duren and Stewart. And then Stewart's not a fantastic finisher, not a lob threat. Duren's still having that chemistry stuff with Cade. So it's when they get Bagley back, when him and Duren get more chemistry, I think it's just going to be even better.
Yeah. And as he here, Aaron, as he said, maybe if we fix our biggest issue on the team and play 2 bigs, we would also have better screening. And they want to do that. I got the opportunity to ask Casey that in a press conference. After which game was this? I believe it was after
against the Knicks
game. I believe it was after. There's my boy.
Hey,
what's poppin'? Or should I say,
Joe was just on the phone trying to reach you. Did he get a hold of you?
He offered me. He offered me, the opportunity, to trade the rights to Victor Wembanyama for Darko's eventual son, and so I'm going to think about that. And Darko Jr., welcome to the Pistons.
You got to go to because I remember reading your quote about Coach Casey saying we want to play these guys, right?
Yep.
Duren and Beef Stew together. We will eventually.
Will.
Over at Detroit Bad Boys, we've been calling this the double beef lineup, Jalen Duren and Beef Stew. So really excited for the double beef lineup whenever they get a chance to roll it out there.
Yep. He said specifically he wants to play Duren and Stew together. And I think it speaks to how they actually see Beef Stew long term. Because for a long time, I didn't know when I said I don't know if the starting whatever front court mate, I didn't know what they saw Stewart or Duren as. I believe that Duren is pretty versatile as he continues to learn. But Stewart, man, he's been impressive. He's been very impressive. And as they get healthy, you're going to see these bigs starting to play together more and more. As Noel gets acclimated, you're going to see these bigs play more and more. I know. It's good, brother.
I was going to say, Greg Kelser pointed out, on broadcast that, we talked a lot about his 3-point shot and about that coming along. And he's obviously still working on it. It looks like a work in progress. The shot itself, from the form and everything, is a good shot. I think the real money maker and the thing that's going to help him a lot is we talk a lot about Cade in the mid range, but Beef Stew in the mid range as well has been a big piece of his game, the ability to expand outside of the paint. And if he's going to be able to open up the paint for guys like Duren to be able to drive and cut in and get buckets and, and get lobs over the rim, I think that's only going to make, Isaiah Stewart just, that much, more useful. And also that's going to be the big thing to me is, as far as him continuing to grow his game. And one thing he's done really well this season, rebounding the ball, especially, after the start. I know in the preseason that was kind of a struggle. I know even the first couple of games it was a little bit of a struggle, but for the most part, he's been averaging a double-double this season. So, I know a lot of the big narrative over the first couple of games, even from people like myself, is, we got to get Duren in the starting lineup as soon as possible. That still might be true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that especially if Isaiah Stewart keeps playing like this, it doesn't necessarily mean he'll be the one going out of it.
Yeah. No, that's true. He's somebody that we wondered, is he able to average that double-double in the season? And right now he's putting in work. He's putting in work. I said I want to see him earn it at the beginning of the season. I didn't know if he was going to be that guy. I still don't know if for the whole overall build of this team, for just the fit, for the lineup of it, for what the East is bringing every single night, if that's the best lineup. I believe that starter minutes are something that Stu needs. But I believe that as what he's been doing lately is something that is more, startable long term when his team is contending than what we were wondering. And that's what we want all these players to do. With Killian, it was almost as if we kind of put him in their place. And with Stewart, we've been just saying, hey, earn your way there. And these guys have been kind of working in opposite directions ever since. And so from that regard, I read not that Killian's working to be in this position, but that they've been going in these opposite directions ever since. And so it's I respect the work that all these guys are putting in, but I respect the fact that Stu's work is actually coming through out on the court. It's actually coming through as it relates to production. I'm proud to see him averaging that double-double, getting busy in the paint, kind of being nasty, shooting efficiently down there too. Shooting efficiently. It's not like, when we saw Drummond starting to try and get busy in the paint and trying to do those hook shots. And y'all know me, I have supported him before. You know what I'm saying? But it wasn't like, oh yeah, we see the work paying off. It was like, bro, man, I'm a supporter. Stop, you're hurting me because I'm actually looking. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh.
It's like, bro, I'm trying to defend you. Stop.
Yeah, I'll be in mid conversation. It's like, oh my gosh, that was an ugly hook shot. Like, how do you shoot the hook on the right side, but it hits the left backboard?
Skill.
That's why it doesn't happen much.
Yeah, exactly. If I can go back to beef stew though, real quick, him and Sadiq must have gotten in the gym together, and they're like, "Yo, man, let's look at how big we are. Let's look at how swole we are, and let's just start attacking the hoop because they're leading the team in free throws now. Beef stew at 50, Sadiq Bey at 44.
Yeah.
Beef stew is 5.6 per game, 74% from the line, and then 4.9 for Sadiq at the line, 88.6. Like that's been a big. I think that's been one of the things that hasn't gone as recognized, especially for Beef Stew, the way he's attacked the rim to where he's understanding. Now I know how to drive to get contact. Like that seems as big of his jump shot or as big of a deal as his jump shot is his ability to just draw all those extra fouls now. So fantastic job so far.
No, I'm glad you brought up those free throws on the Morning Woodward show. Wednesday? That was something that I brought up. That Jeff and I, we were kind of banting about. Is like, yo, did you see the jump in his free throws? Not just that he's leading or being one of those leaders on the team in free throws, but he went from 1.5 attempts last year to 5.6 a few days ago. It was 6.5 attempts again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge in the growth of his game, because a lot of people will look at the points, they'll see 12, 13. You got to look at the impact. If he's going to be in that middle, drawing fouls, wreaking havoc on, the team's defenses and the team's offense in the paint, I mean, what more can you ask for? And he's going to get in there, hit 1 of 3 or 1 of 4 threes. And, because that was the one thing I was like, I think 6 or 7 attempts a game is a little too much. Bring that down to maybe 3, 4 if it just so happens to be like a bad blowout either way. You know what I'm saying? But, I don't know. I've been really, really, really impressed with Stu. I still want to see what it looks like long term, but
yeah, I'm definitely starting to see those glimpses of like that. Of he talked about watching a lot of Al Horford this offseason, studying what they were doing over there. Like you can start to see those glimpses, right, of that big who can play outside of the basket, the one who doesn't necessarily, because we talk all the time about the big, we always mean that as the 5, but like some systems aren't a one big system, you know what I mean? Especially even in the modern NBA, we even saw the Celtics, it's not just Al Horford that made them go, it was Robert Williams as well, right? So like Jalen Duren doesn't, might not necessarily be that, big with the more expansive offensive game at the moment, but, he doesn't necessarily have to be, especially if Isaiah Stewart can come in and complement, those pieces of his game, because Duren's going to complement him on the defensive end. So, I think that's one of those things where, especially if we just keep continuing to see that growth and improvement, like that's just been the big thing. It's just, how night and day much more of an impact it looks like Isaiah Stewart has on the offensive end. Like there were moments last year where Isaiah Stewart was a factor offensively. It's been almost every game now. Like even the last few games, I know like the Golden State matchup was a good matchup for him because it's like, kind of like a smaller team, but like even against the Bucks, he went out and still had a double-double. Like even against like that big size where, he's at a disadvantage. He didn't even have Jalen Duren with him on that trip. Like that's impressive. Like we talked a lot about, how good, all the other players have been. And, I just think, Isaiah Stewart's, improvements have been night and day.
They have. I like I said, again, as somebody who said, this is the guy I'm keying in on this season. This is my Pistons X factor. How, this guy continues to go is how I believe, both his trajectory and the Pistons trajectory will be, whether he's starting or coming off the bench.
Right.
Proven to be an invaluable piece to at least this early build. We put them, like I said, we put them in these places early when they're drafted. We hope they pan out. But when they actually start to do the things, and it's what Cade said, I know I can trust Isaiah Stewart because I see him work. I see his body of work. Like I see what he does, and I know what he's going to do when he gets out there in the court. He's like, I see what he does in practice. I see what he does off the camera. I know I can trust that guy out there in the court with me. This is our leader saying this about Stu. And it's awesome to see. Year 3 for these guys. We talk a lot about like, yo, this is year 3 for Killian. What's he gonna do? But like you said, with Sadiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart, and we say this that Killian needs to do this too, right? You said that Sadiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart must have been working out because they just both have this mentality that we're bigger, we're going to attack. Where the heck did we miss, or that Killian missed his news alert that you're a 6'5" point guard with some heft to you, bro? Like,
Yeah.
use that. Now, you brought up something very, very key, and I know we got to get back to Cade, but the pick and roll situation. We want Killian to be able to operate, even if it's crappy pick and roll, but having no real pick and roll action, they're trying, but not having effective pick and roll, that's going to affect a Killian way more than it's going to affect a Cade.
So talking on the Cade conversation, I saw this earlier today and it blew my mind. So players to have a 26-6 season before turning 22: Magic Johnson, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, LaMelo Ball, and currently on track to have that same type of season is Cade Cunningham. I wrote an article based on, seeing this earlier today, and I just think we talk about Cade going to be a star. He's a star now. Like, he 100%, we saw in 2 straight matchups, like even if the second matchup wasn't his greatest night scoring wise, he went toe to toe this past week against Trae Young twice, Steph Curry, and Giannis twice. That's everything you want and more out of your number 1 overall pick player, let alone a guy who just turned 21 like a month ago. And so as I keep seeing, this past week was just when I think of, seeing players like growing up right in front of our eyes, it almost just felt like, this past week or week to week and a half of Cade's, career has just been a real, like, we're really starting to see what year 2 Cade looks like in comparison to his rookie season. It really seems to me like we're starting to see him take over in that effect. Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah. With I think one of the coolest things with Cade, the maturation of his game right now is realizing that he knows he's the guy, and that he's now not just that, because we all want guys to have that confidence. That's the reason why I say that we want Killian to have that same type of confidence, but that his teammates are saying, you know what, Cade, you're that guy. You know what I'm saying? This is the most, I think, important year. I think this is the most important year for his team to establish that, because you had 2 more lottery picks come in. So Cade got added to a team that had a lottery pick and then had 2 players that, if a redraft happened, might go in the lottery, and Sadiq and Isaiah Stewart, and then you got 2 more lottery picks coming in after Cade. I believe that it is highly important for this team to look at him and say, you know what? You need to be more aggressive. Remember that first game against the Hawks that he started saying, you know what? I'm just going out here and scoring. I'm just going to go out and put mine up. They asked him, I believe it was James Edwards or Johnny Kane, who asked Cade after the game in a press conference, effectively, what was it? What was your mindset? What changed for you as it relates to your level of aggressiveness? And he said, really, that was my teammates. They told me I need to have the ball. They told me to go and kind of, probe and to look for my shot and to get into the mid-range. And that's an awesome thing. That's an awesome thing to me, because, we look at some of these other squads. We talked all summer about, hey, maybe Troy's in these guys' ears about, hey, I was a part of this OKC team that could have probably been dynastic. But because the different parts and pieces and egos and this and that couldn't work out, because they couldn't come to their hierarchical system or whatever, it broke down in one part, and then it fell apart again later. You know what I'm saying? With Russ and KD and those guys later. But what if they could have found a way to make it work? And I believe that Troy is trying in some parts to do that. I don't believe you just go and get all these draft picks. They actually pan out just to flip them. I think some of these guys you actually get endeared to, even though it's not supposed to be personal. You know what I'm saying? It's not, it's not supposed to be personal over the business and over the good of the team. But I don't know, man, when they got these types of players, when you're drafting these guys and they are effectively throwing their cap at your feet, that's great for your foundation, especially when Cade is proven to be that guy. Because you got drudges, not that Jaden Ivey isn't that guy, but you have drudges and people out there who are saying, like, nah, Ivey's better than Cade.
And I think the people that I think the people that say that, like, I can understand looking at Ivy's game, and I think to the general casual observer, the areas that Ivy is great at are easier to understand and easier to comprehend, because when you see that game breaking speed, it's like, holy cow. Whereas when Cade's using his body to create separation in the mid range, that's not as flashy. That's not as much of a highlight reel, right? Like, that's just something that, quite frankly, isn't going to be sexy basketball. But the reality of it is that he's just extremely effective at it. Like, he's shooting almost 53% in the mid range this year. And James Edwards III actually did a really good article pointing out a lot of, like a lot of like the changes that Cade made and the adjustments that he made. And like, if you look at like a lot of like the stats, they'll show like he's already been blocked in the restricted area and in the paint 15 times this season. So like a lot of like, especially like in like those first couple matchups, like against the Knicks, like against the Pacers, like we were facing a lot of that size and rim protection when Cade was trying to go and challenge their bigs. He was getting blocked and met at the rim a lot. Whereas now, where he's expanding his game in the mid range, he's only been blocked there 3 times. And the thing with Cade's size, the thing with Cade's game, the thing with Cade's body, the thing with like Cade's all around ability is he's going to be able to get pretty open, and he's going to be able to create enough separation to always make sure that shot's going to fall. So I think, understanding like, where you can create your separation, how you can get to your spots, but also like what shots you can and can't take at this level, right? Like, I think even Ivy's having to learn, like, hey, you can challenge and go, like, you can go and cut to the rim and like dunk on people. And you know what? There are some bigs that you probably can go yam on, but like, it's one thing to go try to dunk on Mason Plumlee. It's another thing to go try to dunk on Clint Capella or Rudy Gobert, right? So I think that's the big thing, is just like learning how to get to your spots, learning what you do when you get there. And I think, we've just seen after Cade made those quick adjustments, immediately has just been better.
Yeah, immediately. And usually you would think that efficiency would be affected, but I saw his true shooting go up. I was looking at all of these numbers. We read these things out the other day on Woodward Pistons and on Morning Woodward. His true shooting went up as well as other specific stats. Man, I wish I had those things in front of me right now, like I did the other day. But it's just amazing to see how Cade taking these steps forward. And I wrote this in an article. I know you wrote your article as well, Sean. The more that Cade attacks, the more that Cade looks to be proverbially selfish, it's just better for the Pistons, man. It just is. This team, think about the gravity he creates. His mind is naturally already, I just want to get my teammates involved. I just want to make plays for them. We all hear him say that, and we all see him try to go out there and attack and do that. But when he goes out there and pops off for 1, 2, 3, 4 buckets in a row, do you guys see the way the whole defense changes? It's wild, man. Everybody starts playing him different. That's why I think Bojan is very good. But do y'all see how open he is?
I was just going to say, this guy is getting fed the best looks of his life, because not only like is he making like his shot at like a high quantity, he's shooting 50% from 3, guys.
Say that again, bro. Let's get the sound effects. That's been missing.
50% from 3.
That's wild. Troy was like, you know what? Let's sit down right now. Let's get this deal done. That's wild.
Yeah,
That's
man.
wild.
Like and I know a lot of people are talking about Bojan and how great he would be in the second unit. But guys, you can't, especially with some of the struggles that we've had early in the season, especially on the offensive end, some of the consistency things. You can't just take Bojan out of the starting lineup right away, especially not that easy and not without having more of a conversation. Because if we're being honest, from game 1 to now, he's probably been our best player, obviously up until when Cade started, becoming, Hemi Neutron and Hemi Turner and doing all these things. But Bojan's been our most consistent player. I mean, that's a definitive fact.
Oh no, where's he at? Apollo. Shout out to Apollo.
That's exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. He won't stay. Yeah. That's the thing. And that's the other question. Have you ever seen Bojan Bogdanovic miss a shot? I haven't.
Huh.
No,
It's like the things that make you just go, huh.
it hasn't happened.
Man, what a pickup. We were talking about this the other day, right? Like, we were all sitting here saying we love Jeremy Grant. We don't want to just give him away for nothing. We if there's a good deal out there, he'll find it, to get rid of him. If it's not, he'll keep him. But we all realized that where this offense was going, where the leadership was going on this team, it was just kind of passing who Jeremy Grant was as a player by. And we had the $20 million invested in him. We had a 4 spot, right? That was Jeremy Grant. Like, instead of just trading like a Jeremy Grant for Bojan, no. I want another draft pick. I want to fleece the Knicks, and then I'll go and sign Bojan. Then I'll go and trade and then re-sign him back. Like, that's just masterful, In less than 6 months, he went from Jeremy Grant to Jeremy Grant and Alec Burks, Nerlens Noels, and freaking Bojan Bogdanovic, man. Like, wow.
Yeah. And overall, like, for Nerlens Noel, by the way, for being a break glass in case of emergency big, I thought he came in and did okay. Like, for someone that didn't really play with this team before until the other day, I thought he did a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys confident that this is the year that this will be addressed? Jeremy Grant's younger than Bojan. We still need a player like Grant, and that's what we're missing. And we all said that. Everybody from Sean to Steve to everybody who's been on this platform has all said we are going to miss Jeremy Grant sorely. Like, when that conversation came up, none of us sat here and said, "Oh no, skip him." But I believe this is the year. We've seen him address several things from guard. We've seen him address several things as it relates to trying to address their bigs. I believe this is the. Oh, there you go, Sean. Right on point.
So,
right on point.
Per Sean Denevy of Heavy.com, the Pistons, Magic, and Spurs are reportedly threats to pry Grant Williams away from Boston. They will be in a position to offer him $17 to $18 million and maybe front load the contract to scare off the Celtics from matching. So, to answer your question, I think with the salary cap that we have available, I think it's certainly something we could address, but also I think it's certainly I think it's certainly something you could see us address potentially in the lottery as well. I could definitely see Detroit wanting to start, especially with their first round picks. I think we have a lot of guys that we can consider as key, core, parts of our young core, and guys that are number 1 and number 2 options in a lot of cases. I think where we need to get better now is around the edges as these guys develop and get better, right? I think it's how do you surround, better players, around Cade and Ivy, guys who can play better. And Grant Williams is the epitome of exactly that type of guy. And I think, people are like, oh, well, Bojan's older than Grant. Why would we bring him in? Well, first of all, part of the benefit is Bojan is older. We needed, someone that's older and has more of that playoff experience, and somewhat because Bojan has multiple, playoff exits and multiple playoff appearances that Jeremy Grant just doesn't have. And also he fills a role that Jeremy Grant just doesn't fill either. We needed shooting badly.
Yeah, we did. We're badly. And it's so bad that if you remove Bojan from the equation this year, it looks kind of bleak. But RB the baller, he didn't bring that up because he said Grant Williams is the option. We said, do we see the Pistons going out this summer and addressing it? And he just brought that up as well. There was some news that broke today that stated, yes, the Pistons are looking at those types of players. And they have to put their name in the ring, and that might not even be them. It's just they have the money, and this is a free agent. They have the whole at power forward.
And also the whole point is, I think with a lot of Detroit's holes, it's the solution isn't going to be, one player, right? I would argue that power forward position, that power forward hole is going to have to be kind of by committee. And I think part of what Detroit has right now, or I think what they could do is have different lineups for different situations. If you have if you need to space the floor more, being able to have someone an Isaiah Livers or a Grant Williams who can stretch the floor and be on the perimeter, but also having that option you know, like even if it's like an upgrade over Marvin Bagley at some point, someone that is more of that, you know, big that can play around the rim, right? Like I think that's the big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna get back to Chuck's question. And yeah, Bagley will help, but the problem that exposes is just the fact that we need more bigs like Bagley. We need younger bigs like Bagley. We don't have those. Duran fits that mold, but he's still learning. He didn't come in with that being a part of his already natural skill set, that whole pick and roll, NBA pick and roll game. Marvin Bagley is a whole different level of heft and size. That was just a natural part of his game. When you look at that, as soon as they traded for him, everybody was clued into Pistons at all. Even people who weren't clued in. People started cluing into Pistons because of the Marvin Bagley trade. You saw Cade running off of his picks and being so wide open, bro. We don't have anybody else on the team that's doing that. When this is from, bro, we used to be able to sneeze and know the Pistons was going to have that even on bad teams, but they don't have that on this squad right now when they absolutely need it. You know, as they go and they continue to get guys like that, I saw somebody say we do need some, you know, some blue chip two-way power forwards. Yeah, I think that's the hope. I think that's what they're trying to see what Stewart can or can't be. But the height, the length, you know, can he overcome that with his absolute tenacity like Ben Wallace did? That's what Stewart is going to face. And, you know, with Chuck, this is important too, because this is what I've pondered too. With what they said about Duran, I see more versatile power forward who can kind of float all over the place, be 6'5" and even be a large ball like 3 if his handles are what they say that they can be. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think about this one?
Just imagine if he has the freedom to be a roaming big on the defensive end, as far as like, you know, being able to both switch on guys, you know, if need be outside, but also like, you know, to be able to run in and help with protecting the paint. Like I think, you know, like the beauty with the type of athlete that Duran is that I think he could succeed in both roles. I think the question is like, what's the role that's going to unleash his potential the most? Because I think that's going to be the interesting thing, because to be honest with you, I think like his athleticism and the tools, that everything that he has allows him to play either role. I really think it does. But I think it just comes down to, if we do let him play that, you know, that like you said, that versatile, you know, 4, does that unlock another level? In my opinion, it just might.
Yeah,
And
because keep going, bro.
I was just gonna say, that's the thing about Duran, is like, he was the thing in my life that until June I didn't know how much I needed. And it's like now, like as I watch more and more play basketball, I just like, it's like the possibilities are endless. I'm like, a whole new world.
Yeah, bro. He was like charcoal to my drumming fix, bro. He just cleaned me out, dog. I'm just like, oh, and he wears the 0. I'm just like, this is great. This is awesome. But Steve, like, because when I think about this, I know what, you know, I see some of the chats are saying, oh, I see him as a center. Is there benefit to if he can be a power forward and the Pistons can actually put a big bodied center next to him?
Yeah, that was going to be my point. So it's going to positionless basketball, right? What that really actually means is your position is who do you guard on the other end. So if he's able to guard power forwards in the Eastern Conference, that means he's guarding Giannis. That means he's guarding KD. To me, that's where I'm like, I don't know that I can go that far, because you have to have somebody behind him that's going to be able to handle Joel Embiid, going to handle Brook Lopez. We just saw in 2 games now, if they really wanted to, the Bucks could have just thrown it to Brook Lopez all night. Like, they had no answer for him. That's going to be the thing, is like, even somebody, no diss on Brook Lopez, but, you know, he's immobile, but he's still so strong that
He loves the Pistons, bro.
Yeah, come playoff time, he's just going to feast if Duran is not, or somebody like Duran is not on him. So that precludes like maybe a Victor Wembanyama or something next to Duran. I like the idea for all the reasons you guys laid out, but again, it depends on who else is there. Because if he's on a Giannis or on a KD, then who is behind him taking the Brook Lopez's and Joel Embiid's?
I love the way you put that too, Steve. It wasn't that he can't guard those guys. It's that if you remove this guy who's shown to be really good help side defender, it's bleak. So yeah, you're right. We got to get somebody with discernible skill, like Sean's been saying. Like he's good, man. Like I really like what I'm seeing from him. Like the defensive, I see him guarding guards, and he's just standing there like, you can shake in front of me all you want. And usually when centers do that, they have to back up. He's right up there, right on them when they shoot the ball. I'm just like, man, oh man, like that Sean Kemp stuff they were talking about on draft night.
Yeah, and thank goodness, by the way, that he's probable to come back in the lineup tomorrow night because, I mean, Kool-Aid, you and I were in the building. It did not look great. Nothing about that injury looked ideal in any fashion. So, the fact that he's probable to be back in the lineup, that, he should be okay and good to go, only missed 2 games, absolutely ideal. Because with a sprained ankle, I mean, we've seen it before. It could be 2 games. It could be the Reggie Jackson situation where they literally said you could be better off breaking the ankle than the type of sprain he had. But by the way, I was just gonna say, I don't think there was anything that crushed my spirit more as a Pistons fan than what Brook Lopez did to Andre Drummond in that playoff series, bro. That was just like he was just licking his lips game 1 through 4. Just when he saw Andre, he was like,
bro, y'all know how I feel. Y'all know how I felt about Andre, especially during those times. I mean, he was in that playoffs. It was like, okay, I gave him his credit. From February to whenever, he had a crazy stretch when Blake Griffin got injured. With Drummond, if he doesn't have that stretch, the Pistons don't make the playoffs. So I was trying to say that, but if you're getting dunked on by Giannis, you know what? You can have that. But it was just like, bro, you're it's like I can't say what I was about to say. Oh my gosh, I can't say that. You're getting beat by Lopez brother again. It's just like, oh my gosh, pick a Lopez brother. Andre Drummond can't do anything with him, dog.
Is Mount Rushmore of nemesis the Lopez brothers, the ability to shoot free throws, and Joel Embiid.
You talk about a guy, and you know what's crazy? I feel like his whole mental career was snatched because of the Lopez brothers and Embiid. I feel like his whole career was just like, oh, all-star, all Embiid year. Nope.
Seeing Andre Drummond in a Bulls uniform is up there with me, and seeing Ben Wallace in a Bulls uniform of this just looks off.
Drummond looks like he knows it looks off. He just looks like it, like, eh.
He's just like, I know this is weird. We all know this is weird. Oh my gosh.
No, I didn't. I'm gonna reach out to Mike Curtis of the Detroit News. I know he travels with the team as well. He got to ask some questions today. But yeah, I'm gonna try and figure that out if there's a minutes count restriction. I know that there was talk of him potentially traveling with the team, playing potentially on the road, and they're like, no, let's just let him rest up for a potential Friday return. I would assume that there's no minute restriction if they're saying let him rest. I think if he would have come back the game before the Friday game, then you would probably see them go more gingerly. But I hope there's no minute restriction. But
I mean, even then, like for the most part, if you look at like his minutes anyway for like what he's played so far, he generally doesn't play more than like 15 to 22 minutes anyway. So like I feel like as far as like minutes restriction goes, I feel like the type of like the amount of minutes he plays, I feel like you might not necessarily have to restrict, but you might see them play it careful, maybe like the first 2 games just to make sure he's good. Make sure you're not tweaking it again or anything,
Yeah. He said, Ben hurt me. For Drummond, I feel nothing for him.
Hey, I've forgiven Ben, man. I will say though, I remember I was in the building on Ben's first game back to Detroit as a Chicago Bull. I was in the building for that one.
Bro, how was that?
That atmosphere was electric. It was the boos that I heard. I've never heard louder boos in my entire life. And I remember one in particular sign. Someone made a sign that said "Fear the Fro," but they made the entire fro out of cash, and it was just like, like people were getting petty with it, man. It was, but all's forgiven now. We love Ben. We love Ben. And now that I know it was just over $12 million, now I kind of get where Ben's coming from.
I
Hey,
feel
hey,
bad.
Joe says careful. Joe says careful.
Joe's like, you are getting at a topic that makes me rather upset.
Oh my god.
Uh,
Look, bro, let's get into this Killian Hayes stuff, man. I think you already said it. Sheesh, man. This whole Killian Hayes is our Darko. Troy's Darko. I
mean,
just, man, like that's disappointing.
I want to,
This-
yeah, I want to preface it with we're seeing we've seen Geno Smith come back and be what we didn't expect. We've seen Lauri Markkanen this year have a comeback and not what we expect. I think we got to go back. I think they're gonna have to go back to the drawing board with Killian and consider, if he keeps playing like this, I think at some point, G League needs to be considered at least for a little bit. I think with the big thing, like you said before, it's like you're 6'5", like you got to know your size. Like sometimes, size isn't always physical. Size is mental as well.
yeah.
And like obviously with like I don't want to like tear his spirit or anything like that's happened with like the Ben Simmons stuff because I think some of that commentary at a certain part got overcorrected and like harsh. However, like if you look at what Killian's numbers are, like as of a couple days ago, he was one of 3 players in the league to be the only players that have more assists than points on the season. He was, he has some of the most average attempts on the second unit, and he's averaging, he's shooting 17% from the field. Not just 17% from 3, which is what he's also shooting from 3, but he's also shooting 17% from the field. And so, like, when you look at, and it's not like all of his decisions, I think are necessarily poor. I think you saw Killian try to be a little bit more aggressive coming out of the gate. And I just think each bad performance is just stacked up on him. And I think you're just seeing it, affect him mentally. There's still things I see Killian do on the court. Like I remember one like position in particular, he like couldn't decide if she wanted to cut towards the basket or stay in the corner. And he like stepped in, stepped out, stepped in, stepped out, stepped in, stepped out, stepped in, stepped out. And I'm like, all right, so what do you, and then he eventually cut in. He was like, I'm not going to go to the basket. And he was like, ran like in the middle of the free throw line. Then he had his body like positioned like this, like away from the basket. It's like, what are you like? There's like moments where I'm like, what are you doing? Like, that's my, like, what are you trying to, like, where are you even trying to be on the court?
Yeah.
And like we talked, I know we talked a lot about him wanting to be an anchor on the defensive end and take more leadership and ownership on that end, which, is a great attitude to have. But if you can't, if you're a minus on the offensive end, and unfortunately for him, a lot of those mental errors started to carry over to the defensive end too, especially like there were some sloppy fouls and bad decision-making there as well. And it's like, well, when you're no longer making good decisions on that end either, that's when the red flags need to be ringing, because when you're regressing at the things that we've all said that's Killian's strength, that's when we're really starting to have some issues. So I don't want to say, Killian's career's over. I don't want to say he's definitively a bust, but what I will say is something's got to change here soon.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that about his defense, because if you're not going to take the necessary steps forward and you're going to actually show regression, because he had that nice stretch where he showed that whole 12, 5, and 5 towards the, in that stretch in the second half of the season. If you're not going to show those things, then you at least need to be some type of a Jason Kidd light, where we know your defense and your playmaking is dependable. When you're not bringing that at an elite level, or even at a, all-star level, or people are looking at you and saying, you know what, Killian has a type of defense that can be honored by all NBA, but just because, all defensive teams, but just because where the Pistons are right now, he'll get that in due time. If he's not there, that's a problem. You can't have your scoring be as bad as it is. You know what I mean? Though we said we wish Ben Wallace could score, and I remember being in the moment of Ben Wallace's career here, we never, ever, ever, ever said, bro, give us something. It was never like that. The Pistons knew in playoff games that they could start the game off with 2 and 3 straight possessions to Ben Wallace. And they would go out and say, yeah, the game plan is we know if we go to Ben Wallace 2-3 times in a row, that's even worse for the opponents when he gets back on defense. Like, they knew that. And we know that Ben Wallace had far less offensive skill than Killian Hayes.
But you know what Ben did do, Kool-Aid? When
What's
he
up,
did
sir?
need to do something on the offensive end, he wouldn't make skill part of the equation. If he needed to go get a bucket, he would go up and he would make a bucket happen. He would go and slam it down and get close to the basket and be aggressive. And that's the thing with Killian. Like, sometimes if your shot's not falling, or if your layup isn't going down, go slam it. Go stuff it in the rim. Like, that's the thing. Like, sometimes you have to make your own luck, and you have to make things happen. And like, that's the thing with Killian is like, use your leverage, use your physicality, like use your aggression. Like, if you're not seeing them fall if you're not seeing them fall, go make it fall. Go push it down. Like, you know what I mean?
Because Steve, like what Sean is saying, because I want to get your thoughts on this too. When I hear Sean say things like use your aggression, use your this, use your that, you know what's funny about it? It's not that Killian has to develop this stuff. We've seen him do it. What? Take it away, Steve. I don't.
So shout out to RB the baller. You shouldn't have highlighted that one. You should have highlighted Javon Carter greater than Killian Hayes.
Yeah, he had a whole bunch
Javon
of
Carter the
them.
last 2 games, and if you watch the Pistons broadcast, both Special K and Blaha kept saying, this guy hasn't scored a basket yet. This guy hasn't scored a basket yet. But you know what he did do? He was in everybody's grill. He's their starting point guard. This is somebody they picked up off the scrap heap because he understands, number one, I need to play lockdown defense. And he came from a program at West Virginia and Bob Huggins. If you know anything about Bob Huggins, legendary defensive coach. Number one, they played nothing but full court press. So he was in this system that made him understand defense. Number one is going to overcome my size limitations. And then he bounced around the league a little bit. He was on the Suns. I forget where else Javon Carter was before ending up on the Bucks, who, hey, what do you know? They just need a point of attack defender at the one spot who can occasionally do role player things like hit a 3 or operate a little bit out of pick and roll. Like, Killian needs to be studying that. Because again, if you go back and watch those games, Javon Carter is all over those games, whether on Cade, whether on Ivy, like being able to be somebody that just frustrates them. And that's what separates somebody like Killian from Javon Carter, is that ability to understand, I just need to do these few things. Killian's being asked to do too many things. But the one thing I do want to say in his favor, do you know out of the lineups they've thrown out there, what's been the most used lineup, would you guess? Because I have numbers here in front of me.
With Killian?
No, just in general, out of all the lineups the Pistons have thrown out there, which is the lineup that's been utilized the most?
To take a guess at it, Killian, Cade, Stu.
It's so good that Steve left.
Steve, you can't do this. What a cliffhanger, Steve. Yeah. Like, what?
Find out next week on
Dragon Ball Z.
Talk. I'm gonna guess. All right. So while we're waiting for him, here's my guess. I think it's Cade, Killian. All right, he's back.
Yeah, that's not even an internet thing. This is a me thing. I keep hitting the wrong buttons tonight. That's a me thing.
I was like, what? Where did he go? Hold on. What's your guesses, though? Let's give our guesses first.
Yeah,
y'all put it down in the comments too if you can. And what's the question again? The most used lineup?
What's been the most used lineup?
I'm gonna guess, and I feel like I'm gonna be way wrong on this one. I'm gonna guess Killian, Cade, Ivy, Bogdanovich, Stewart. That's my guess.
And what was yours, Kool-Aid?
Ooh, I was gonna go Killian, Cade, Stewart, Sadiq, and who am I missing? And Bojan.
You're both incorrect. It's been the starting lineup. The starting lineup has played 167 minutes and 9 seconds together. Can you guess, not even what the next lineup is, but how many minutes the next most used lineup has played together? So
What is
the
that,
top
man?
lineup, the 167 minutes, 9 seconds. Just throw out a number. The next closest lineup, how many minutes together have they played?
50
90.
minutes.
22 minutes and 59 seconds. So they've
Holy.
been relying heavily on the starting lineup, and everything under that is like 19 or under. And Killian is all in these lineups of like 22 minutes or less. So I think that's part of the struggles, is just like they're just throwing him out there with people. Sometimes Cade, sometimes Ivy, sometimes Sadiq,
That's
sometimes
wild.
Kevin Knox. So it's really hard when you're not in a lineup that is consistent like that.
But-
and going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, they don't have anybody that can set good picks yet. That's what Killian's game is running pick and roll. That's so hard when your game is not isolation, when your game is not just creating off the dribble. Like, you need those pick and roll. So I really hope just a 3-man thing of Killian, Marvin Bagley, Jalen Duren in a second unit. I think that can be something. And then you throw Isaiah Livers in there, maybe Alec Burks as well. Then you have shooters. And I'm not going to say he's going to make a gigantic turnaround, but it makes more sense. And again, 22 minutes is not enough to establish any kind of thing. So, yeah.
He didn't say excuse guys. He said the one thing, if you're going to give Killian anything, was that the pieces that he needs, the type of player he is. It's not that we all saw the production with Cade go up when Marvin Bagley's going here. We can't give that to a player, take that away from another player who plays of a similar style.
I also would say,
going back to Javon Carter again. Javon Carter's in a role with consistent minutes alongside the same dudes, right? Like, Killian just needs that to see and to have final judgment to say, all right, now we know, like, that even when we put him in a specific role with people that should complement him, this doesn't work, then yeah, it's done.
Yeah.
And I would say one thing with Killian, I think part of the thing with the lineups is you're right that they've been trying out a lot of things, but I also feel like they've been trying out a lot of lineups because whatever lineup Killian happens to be in, there just hasn't really been that reliable scoring. And I think it's been like they've been wanting Killian to kind of take that role. And I think part of the struggle and part of the adjustments they've had to make is, well, that hasn't been happening. I think that's why you've been seeing more of Sadiq in that second unit. I think that's why you've been seeing more of that starting lineup having to be relied on, is especially, and I do think that guys like Alec Burks, can, and guys like Marvin Bagley are going to help Killian. But on the other hand, I think from an evaluation standpoint, I can't help but feel like Troy Weaver isn't going to look at this part of the season where it was a part where Killian needed to step up, or where Killian could have taken that reins and help bring that stability on the second unit. Like, I can't help but feel like that's going to be looked at as like a missed opportunity. Right. And obviously I know that, like, Dwayne Casey has said, like, like their focus and their primary goal is to help figure out and get to the bottom of what exactly is going on. But at the same time, it's like one of those things where, we've seen throughout the NBA, like, unfortunately, like, you don't always have that time. And, maybe like, the solution for Killian is going to be getting a second chance, maybe in like a system like San Antonio or like Utah, where like they're going to be rebuilding over the next few years. Cause I think, unfortunately, like, as we keep heading over the next couple seasons, Detroit just might not have the time, to wait. Right. I mean, like, I think you see Killian isn't, Killian's kind of flatlining or going down a little bit, whereas the rest of the roster is trending in an upward direction. Right. And a lot of times when you talk about like which parts of the core are going to stay, which parts are going to go, sometimes that decision has to be made, up top. Sometimes that decision's kind of made for them. And we could be seeing that happening right in front of our eyes.
I mean, 6 first-round draft picks in Troy Weaver's time here, and the worst of them is it's Killian right now. And that's the hard part. So when you have to start paying these guys, he wasn't just a first-round pick. His draft slot means he's supposed to get paid if he stays on the squad. And so you want to see him succeed. You want to see him do good. But as it relates to the decisions that have to be made, I don't know if he's going to have that time here.
And I think
tearing anybody down, but it's a business at the end of the day. What are you producing?
and you could bring him back, like if he does, like, start to play better towards the end of the season, you could bring him back on a pretty team friendly deal at this point. Like I think, his draft, spot, to your point, generally does, require that kind of money. Obviously, I don't think Killian's going to be in the spot to, negotiate anything other than the minimum, right? But at least the minimum of what they can offer. But, I think, ultimately, I think a lot of it can be attributed to the fact that like this second unit just, was just so depleted from day one. Maybe that pressure for Killian to be that number one offensive guy on that unit day one, maybe that just wasn't realistic. But at the same time, like, it's not like they had like the luxury of choice at that point either, right?
Yeah, and we have to understand this too. The Pistons are dealing with right now, though they have these 6 first-round draft picks, they're still dealing with just an absolute just abscess of talent. Like they still need a lot of talent. We see that they're stocking the cupboard now for guards, and they're trying, and we see how difficult that is. We see them. We're like, okay, Cade, yes, he was a surefire pick. Ivy, people had questions before the draft. Now people are saying, yo, way to go, Ivy. But look at Killian, the 7th pick in the draft. And we still can't say that we have guard depth after 3 years. They're looking better. They're trending better. And with the bigs, you draft Stewart, you can see what he could be. You draft Duran, you see what he could be. You even go and get a Noel and a Marvin Bagley, and we still sit here and can't say that they have depth. As this team gets more talent and more depth, I believe that, like you said, that could help Killian. But like Sean's bringing up, that timing, and you brought it up too, that timing when the decisions have to be made, unless he's willing to settle for something much, 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 much less in terms of finance, in terms of contract. Like we all say with Drummond, hey, if he wasn't getting this big deal, we'd be able to be more accepting of the type of player he is and his limitations that he brings to the court. Right. I believe that if Killian proves that when these other elements are brought back and he doesn't take a huge step forward, but he shows he can be something liable, maybe, depending on the money. But with what Troy has been able to do to go out there and get high-level talent right after high-level talent, do you even want to play that game?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, like with certain guys like Marvin Bagley, like you could point to a situation and circumstance in Sacramento and go, well, he wasn't necessarily always given the most fair opportunity. He doesn't necessarily have the most stable, organization and ownership and things like that. But I think with, in Killian, you could obviously point to like, oh, well, he had injuries and, they drafted guards immediately, the 2 seasons after he came in. Like you can make all these things of, oh, like could have, or like this should have, or this, like, or like if this went this way, but like that's the reality of the NBA, right? Like you're given your circumstances that you are. Part of being a pro is, and part of, what makes guys rise from the crop and, what makes them stand out is when they're able to overcome a lot of those circumstances, right? Like even you see like even like another point guard who's like, like super like not like can't do a ton on the offensive end, but like is like amazing on the defensive end, like Jose Alvarado. Like let's say Killian came out like that with that type of intensity on the defensive end. Because that's the thing. He's not even playing with that intensity on the defensive end anymore. If he just came out
disappointing, bro.
And that's the thing. If he came out and took that type of ownership on the defensive end, was that type of pest on ball, like those are the things that you could like throw more minutes consistently to Killian. And you could say, oh, well, the offense will eventually come. And that's like the things that could give more patience if he even just showed that type of growth. But the problem is that it's just literally every facet of his game is just regressing. And that's when you can tell that it's a mental thing. That's when you can tell that like the struggles are getting to him. And that's where you really have to go, okay, is this player broken? Like that's the thing you have to, that's the thing you have to start asking. And that's the unfortunate thing. And I hope the answer is no. And like, maybe, like I said, maybe he needs those reps against G League guys to remember that I'm him, that I'm an NBA guy,
because you can you get picked up in rec league, bro, if your defense is right. If they know he's just a hustle guy, oh yeah, let me get him. Oh, he can't even score. I don't care, bro. Do you know what he's gonna do to the other team? You know what I'm saying? This is Detroit. Like, Sean, I keep looking at the Detroit across your hat, and it's just like, Killian, this starts on the defensive end of things. Where did you ever forget that? If this is a restoration, who's not in his head saying, Killian, you did not lose any ability to play defense. Go out there and strap the heck up. Man, goodness. Woo. That Killian is really making I'm trying not to say the wrong things, brother. Sean, we're gonna need a whole anger translator segment again, man.
And again, this is where like I want to come in and be like, and again, this isn't like bashing
It's
Killian
not
as a person.
bashing.
And
It's not about him even being close to the problem. It's about the fact that he's not being close to the 7th pick of a solution he's supposed to be at guard. He started as a starting guard.
These are just the realities.
That proficiency, then he's regressing, like Sean has been saying.
And these are just the reality. Yeah, because again, this isn't just like bashing. This is just the realities of the business. And I think again, where I would come in and say like where Killian still has hope is, I think you've seen more and more examples each and every year of guys getting second and third and fourth and fifth chances and making the most of them, right? Like I think you've even seen like Dennis Smith Jr. over the last week is earning rotation minutes. I think you're seeing
former Piston legend.
Yeah, exactly. Piston, the guy we're gonna hang in the rafters someday, Dennis Smith Jr. But like even like Kelly Olynyk, he went over to Utah and like borderline revitalized his career after what people are saying about him in Detroit. Like even like Carmel, like Dwight Howard, he revitalized his career after people were writing him off for certain things. Markelle Fultz, people called a draft like one of the biggest draft busts of all time. Now, like when he's actually healthy, we've seen he can play, right? Like I think that's the thing of it's not necessarily like the story isn't like fully written, and I'm not even saying that he can't thrive in Detroit. It's just, again, if these early returns are what ultimately is going to be Killian's season, that's not great. And again, I just think, I'm interested to see what the approach is going to be, because again, because with the mental thing, if you send Killian to the G League, there's also the chance that could be the thing that breaks him mentally. Yeah. Right? That could kill his confidence. And so that's the interesting thing. And that's why, like, I don't want to like come out and be like, he's a bust, or like, oh, like he was just like, we completely screwed up. Cause again, like that's where it's like, I want to make sure that we're like being conscious in that sense of like, it's still a human being behind it all. Right.
We've all on this panel, everybody has only had this one thing with Killian Hayes, and that's to encourage him to understand, bro, we've all seen your great moments, your good moments. Do those things a lot more. Like we're only just sitting here saying, like, Killian, you're 6'5". you're not as short as the people who are defending you. Killian, you're bigger. We've seen you soft. Though we've all seen when Killian gets into dribble mode, dribble package Killian. We've all seen it. But then we see him go out there and revert almost back to like Blake Griffin mode, Killian Hayes, like dribble down the court like a robot, look around, pass the ball, run to the corner, and just do this. Oh, I'm kind of open. I kind of want the ball. I'm just putting my hand up because on film they say it doesn't look like I want the ball. You know what I'm saying? It's just like Killian, bro, in the preseason, because we do this. We cover this team from a professional standpoint as well. In preseason, we stated exactly what we saw from him. We put our takes out there that Killian was somebody who's going out there and directing traffic, being aggressive, calling the shots, taking as many shots as Cade was, right? Then we all say, hey, who has the most shot attempts through preseason? It was Killian and Cade. Then Casey said the same exact thing. Coach Casey said the same exact thing. We hit the regular season and it's like something changed. We got to figure it out. He's like we don't know what happened, but something changed. We got to figure it out. That to me denotes mental. That doesn't denote anything like we're not bashing his skill set. I think what makes a lot of people frustrated with Killian is that we know what he can be, but that he's not achieving that for whatever confidence or mental aspect of the game. So it's like, with Stu, we didn't know what Stewart could be. He's showing new evolutions to his game. We know Killian can score when Killian is like in that mode.
He's also using, because again, the similarities with Stewart and Killian is that they didn't stop bringing in guys at his position.
No.
I mean, not only did Detroit bring in Jalen Duren through the draft, they also brought in Marvin Bagley through trade last year, which was after when they tried to bring in Bull in via trade, right? Like Detroit has tried, and not to mention when they brought in Kelly Olynyk, or the time they brought in Mason Plumlee, like all throughout.
They said, Stu, you gonna earn it.
Like that's the thing. He's had to earn it this entire time, and like that's the difference. Is those are the guys that will rise through and overcome those things. Is when Isaiah Stewart sees these guys come in, his mentality was both, how can I earn my spot on the court, but also how can I fit my game to help, help make team better, but also make sure I can be on the court when I'm around, because Isaiah Stewart's not stupid. He sees, because he even said himself, I know what Jalen Duren is. I know like the athletic freak he is and the things that he can do that I can't. But I think there's ways that I can expand my game and get better and still be on the court. And that is how you earn a spot in this league for years to come. The guys who can adapt, the guys who can react, the guys who can, not let those mental hurdles, be like, these big things that weigh on them, but rather opportunities for growth. Like Isaiah Stewart's failed a lot of times, and he ain't afraid to fail some more. And that's part of what makes him special as a young player.
I like that, Sean, bro. Like I'm gonna clip that whole part. Yeah, like that was so eloquent. I saw Steve down there even too, just like almost grinning, like as a professor. He was just like, man, I like that. It was good. Like, I'm gonna move into like the phase of fixing this team. Let's start with Killian Hayes. I want to, Steve, get your take on it first, man. Like, what does Killian Hayes need to do, man? What does he need to do? What makes this thing the palatable aspect of, we see something in Killian, and where do you believe he's gonna get? I want to add that in there as well.
You guys brought it up, being aggressive. Another great example, the Jose Alvarado one. That's a fantastic example. He has to be that now. He has to be that pest, at least on defense. He has to be in the flow. I was taught basketball by my mom, who played in college, and then my aunt as well, who was a really good player. And she always used to have this saying of be a fly on defense. Like, you're always trying to swat the fly, right? You can never swat it away. It's always there. It's in your face. And after a while, you just get so mad at it. You do stupid things. That's what Killian needs to be, because that's what Jose Alvarado is. That's what Javon Carter is. That he needs to be like a fly on defense, to where he's just always in your space and you just can't shake him and get out of it. And then it forces you to do stupid things when you get angry at it. Like, there is no other way, I think, that he can be fixed other than just to do that. And on the offensive side, like you eloquently said, Sean, with Beef Stew, he's not afraid to fail. Killian's afraid to fail. That's the thing that he do. Somebody asked in the comments, does this team have a sports psychologist? Fantastic question, though. Like, I know it's a good question. It's a fantastic question, because that needs to be a thing of like, it does not matter. And again, go look at Giannis.
You're right.
I mean, I took counseling classes in college. If they want one.
That's what sets them apart. They didn't care. They put up all those shots, and then eventually they became really good players, right? Because they airballed a ton of them. The only way you get better is to be aggressive and to fail in games. That's how you get better, right? I think those are just the two things: is being that fly, the pest on defense, and just staying aggressive. Because the last thing he should do is just, like we've said before, last season, you saw when he missed like the first three, put his head down, kind of mope.
Yeah.
It just affects too much. You got to stay aggressive. Don't stop.
I want to give a quick shout out, by the way. Our guy Ashton's in the chat, and he actually had a question. He actually asked, would you give Miles Bridges a second chance? Him, of course, referring to the Miles Bridges situation. He today pleaded no contest to, felony domestic violence charges, will be on probation for the next 3 years and will not have any jail time. First of all, Ashton, shout out being here. We appreciate you. Love you, brother. It was so good seeing you in person this last week. My answer to this is, I think that I want to see what the league, because the league was waiting for I believe they were waiting for this court case and for this plea to happen before they made any judgments and decisions on what they were going to do. I personally would want to wait to see what the league decides and what the league comes to the conclusion of. And also, I personally would say, I would at least want to wait a season or two before making. I think he needs to at least be out of the league for a season or two, just for his own personal well-being, just for his own rehabilitation and health journey. And even then, I think that's before we can start with considering bringing that in. I think the one thing that's special about with guys like Cade, guys like Ivy, guys like Duren and Stewart and all the guys that we have on this team. Obviously you want to say that you want to give people second chances, and you want to, we've seen people in sports who have done, a lot of, atrocious or terrible things, come back and have been given second chances, right? So I'm not going to say like what the line should be on that, but I think personally, like, I think like, my question is, would Troy Weaver take that chance? Like, what, like, would that fit under? And that, like, that's the thing is like, if Troy Weaver were to do like a in-depth process and interview and investigation, and he were to come to the conclusion that, this can be just like this can be something that he can grow and learn from, and that, this isn't indicative of his character, then like, I think that's like a different conversation. I
Yeah.
just think the likelihood of that, if I'm being honest, like I think from everything that, I've read and everything that I've heard, it sounds like if he were to get another shot anywhere, it seems like Charlotte would want to reportedly try to bring him back in the fold. And LaMelo especially would probably want to make that happen. So I'm not saying it can't happen in Detroit. I'm not going to personally say whether it should or shouldn't happen. If I were to give my answer, I personally would lean on, probably, better being safe to not take the chance and see if we can go find someone in the draft or someone in free agency, like, like someone else. But I mean, at the same time, like I said, I think there's just a lot of factors that have to be figured out first before he
Yeah.
can come back in the league. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, and so I like that. I like that. And I like what a lot of the answers were in the comments as well. Everyone that would be hesitant to say, "Hey, let's just sign him up to be a Piston," but nobody's taking away his ability to have a second chance and prove that whether that was a mistake or even purposeful, you're going to purpose to be a different individual moving forward, and that's something he has to prove. What he's actually put out there, though, it's just like, sheesh, you know what I mean? Is that the representation, that you want on your young squad? Is that what you want your team, or you're building an identity to be identified with? You know what I mean? Like, as I continue to just personally grow in my own walk and in my own walk of life, like I understand the impact that that type of behavior and carrying that into your squad can have if it's not nipped in the bud, man. I really do. I really do. You'll wind up sending a lot of things going back the other way. Your growth, all the things that you worked for, you will see it come down slowly but surely. And this team is very, very young. We don't want this team to be overwritten with vets. We want this team to be young. But if this team is going to be young, we all talked about the types of guys that Troy Weaver goes after. And he was never going to say that Miles Bridges wasn't that type of guy until he proved he wasn't that type of guy. So second chance, he needs to get that second chance if he proves that he's worthy of it. I know that the NBA will give it to him whether he's worthy of it or not. Like KPJ can just continue to do what he wants to do. Now I don't know, not to some of those egregious levels, but the NBA is shown to be a place of second, third, fourth, fifth, and even a blind eye. That's kind of sports. It's a business at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But for us on my personal pension, I hope he earns a second chance. I think that's the best way that I can put it. I hope as a person that he goes out there and earns a second chance.
And I just think to that point, Kool-Aid, I just think we need that time to even see if he is getting that, if he is,
I agree with that.
if he is deserving, and if he is, because that's the thing is like, being in the NBA is a privilege. It's not a right. And, like there's just certain things when it comes to, like there's just certain things that are bigger than basketball, right? And like, the things that, that are out there about, Bridges and like some of the images, the text messages, all that, there's definitely a lot of things there that like, that are just bad. They're just not good. So it's just like, it's just one of those things where, again, and it's such a bummer because this is a guy who was set up to, have generational wealth for his family and for, and he's the one that screwed that up for himself, right?
Yeah,
Like
take that away from his family. It's just like, you guys know how I feel about my community. It's just like, that's just, it's not even about, if it's a good look or not. We all know that's not a good look. It's just like, man, get it together. Get it together. NBA or not, get it together, man. Like that sucks. Steve, man, I gotta get you in on this too. You're patiently waiting with Joe.
So I grew up in and around a lot of domestic violence. I've seen people that were the abusers turn their life around. So yeah, absolutely, he deserves a second chance. It's all in the individual to process the hurt that you've caused to your children. Number one, to the woman that you had those children with, and then it's up to the individuals to decide whether to move forward. But on the other side, I was thinking about this a lot because I saw Ashton's quote on Twitter too. So shout out to Ashton's Twitter. And I was reminded of Tyreek Evans and OJ Mayo, who were suspended for serious drug use, right? And the protocol there is they have to take a few years off. They have to go through all these different hoops of drug testing, of going through some type of rehabilitation program or something. And I think it's like 2 to 3 years before they can even look. There's a recent article, I forget who it's by, chronicling Tyreek Evans' return. It's something like Tyreek Evans is ready for a return, but nobody wants to give him a chance, something like that. I think with Miles Bridges, it has to be that same way. I don't know that they've ever had this happen before, where it's like, yes, you can come back, but you have to go through all of these things. You have to be able to understand the impact that you had and why this is such a big deal to your family, number one, first and foremost, and then to the rest of the league. So that would be my thing. Like Sean said, I think it would take a while, and I'm not sure what the protocol is, but I know this has happened in the like I said, serious drug use protocol. What that is, something similar needs to happen here, I believe.
I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. And that's what I meant by he needs to earn his second chance. Like there needs to be something in place that proves, because a second chance isn't for people who haven't changed of heart. That's not what a second chance is supposed to be. So if you've proven that, and you have to accept that people are going to look at you different. Yeah. They just are. They're going to, from this point forward, look at you different. And I get that and I respect that. That ain't no black or white thing. That's a what did you put down on record thing. That's what you did to another human being, to kids, to this, to that. Go out there and prove it, earn it, walk that line. And you know what people do in this country to those types of people who do that? They take them, they lift them back up. They do. And that's why I say, look, he gonna have to go out there and try and earn it. What you saying, son?
And I was just gonna say too, the other piece of it is like, you know, and we're not even talking about like that's just the rehabilitation that's gonna take for him to get on the court. You know, like first he's gonna have to, earn the rehabilitation and the second chance that he's getting on life, right? I mean, this is a guy who just got served 3 years in probation. Someone that's gonna have to do some community service. You know, someone that's probably gonna have to go through some psychiatric care and evaluation and counseling. I hope he is, if he's not being, required to, but that's the thing is like, like we're talking about, like, we've seen even guys like the Ray Rice situation, right? Like we saw like him being fully, like we saw him like being genuinely remorseful and rehabilitate his life. But, even by the time he did that, it was too late for him to have the opportunity, even if there was one out there, for him to go back into the league, right? That's the tricky thing. Like, like even if Bridges does come back after a couple of years, like there's no guarantee he comes back the same player, right? So like that's the unfortunate. There's just so many unfortunate things about it. Hopefully, and again, it's like someone that who has ties to the area, someone that went to Michigan State, grew up in the Saginaw area, like Detroit area, like so obviously. Local pull, local kid. We want to see him, do better and succeed. But like that's just the truth though, man. Like that's just what it comes down to. Cause there's just certain things that are just bigger than basketball. That's one of those things that are just, bigger than
we go through it. We try to talk you, babe, pre-show. We tried to. We tried and sometimes the stuff can get lost in translation, but at the end of the day, you have to recognize that things are bigger than sports. You have to recognize things are bigger than basketball. If Chuck just said it right, man, life comes before a game. Life comes before a live stream. Life comes before work. Life comes before all of that, man. And when we get lost on that, then you can never even say that what you're doing, earning this money, is even for them. You wouldn't even be able to state that. Actually put in that work to be a good human being. And that's what you want to see. You don't want to see somebody who goes out there and tries to do the rehab to get their place back in the game. And that's what I mean.
Right.
Have this be whereas whether you get that second opportunity or not, the second chance he should get is the opportunity to be accepted by people again, not necessarily into the NBA. If the NBA decides, you know what, there's still a place for him after he's been accepted, like you pointed out, Sean, and like I'm glad you brought up, Steve, if his family and the people he has hurt have accepted, and he's proving that his life is about being a part of helping the situation rather than being hurt, rather than being a hindrance, then yeah, if a team wants to be able to give him that, by all means, by all means. And yeah, we do got to think about, Steve and Sean, they helped me understand even more so the benefit of how sometimes our fights, our views, our perspectives can be ones that make us, less perspectivized to how it could be divisive, how it could actually be working against us and things of that nature. And so that's why I'm like, you know what, I'm all for anybody getting a second chance. But as we've all aptly stated, get life together first. And hey, shout out to Darrell, man. Like to Darrell, I don't want to say it wrong, but that's what this is about, man. We sit around and talk about life too before this. This is our release when we come to try and talk Pistons. It's our life away from life, man. And it's when you see people who get the opportunities like Miles Bridges, it's not about not messing up your opportunity. It's about, like Sean said, 100%. I don't know how many people think about these things. What did you take away from your family? What did you take away from your community? What effect did you take? What example did you take away? How many kids aren't getting shoes? How many basketball camps aren't being run in the hood now? How many people in Flint aren't really getting the water that they should be getting? Because these are things that, you know what I'm saying? You can still try and do this, but what type of face and presence and respect can you bring? What type of dignity? These are the things that matter, man. My dad grew up in corporate PR, and what do you see? You see those people coming back to, those types of athletes working with companies to come back to their communities and lift it up. Companies wind up, just kind of, I'm not going to do it. And the important thing is not that companies can't go and help. Miles Bridges is supposed to be the type of guy who understands what, whatever his community is, who understands the intricacies of what his community needs that a corporation might miss. When you take yourself down off the pantheon of being able to speak appropriately for your community and be able to go back to your community and help, even if it's just your immediate family, that's a grave thing, man. Don't waste that opportunity. Don't waste that opportunity. Like I know he's not even a Piston. I know it has some ties here, but it's just like, man, just on life in general, get that together, brother.
Yeah. I mean, of course, like, it's just like, local ties or not, you want to root for someone to be better, right? You want to root for someone to have, it's like one of those things where, again, it's like, the tricky part of it is that, there isn't a correct answer to when the right time for him would be to come back. And I mean, like, obviously, if you're strictly just talking basketball, I'd be lying to you if I wouldn't think that he would be a great fit just from a basketball standpoint. But again, basketball just can't even enter the conversation yet for him for quite a while. And that's just where things are. So,
yeah. All right, then back to these Pistons. What is the fix here, man? Obviously they're waiting on Bags to get back. And obviously a lot of these fixes, I've told people this after the first 5 games. I said, you know what the season is for me? This is a season of Troy Weaver sitting down, like, Ryan the Temp from The Office, that meme where he's just taking note and then looks up at the screen. I know Big Sean has that meme where he's looking at his phone, he's looking up at the screen. That's what this season actually is. This isn't a season where they were supposed to be competing, and they said that from the beginning. They said we are not contending. This is a season where they're learning to compete. And you know what? Who else has to learn what that means is Troy Weaver, who is a first-time head GM in the league. And so what he's doing is sitting back right now, looking at exactly what this team is. And I believe that's why the Bojan signing happened so early. I think he was just like, you know what? Let's just go ahead and get this done right now. As I'm assessing this team and I'm looking at it, this is our three-point shooting. Our team three-point shooting is Bojan Bogdanovic.
Yeah.
Cade, that put a nice weapon or toy for Cade Cunningham. But that's what the season represents to me, is the assessments that Troy is making in terms of who's coming back next year and whose spot is going to potentially get taken by new draft picks and by another signing. Imagine this now. Where he's building, right? All these draft picks are in here, right? And now we also have his signings that we know are part of this core, right? Bagley and Bojan. If Troy goes and makes another signing like that with another 2 draft picks in the first round, we're going to be talking about this team in a little bit different capacity next year because of the talent and the depth that's here. And so that's why I believe this year is about evaluating what's going on with the players that you have drafted.
I think it's not just about learning, how to be competitive in your play style. I think it's also learning how to compete in the sense of learning who you're going to be competing with on a night-to-night basis. Because, like you said, I think we've already seen some adjustments in the rotation, like guys like, Corey Joseph got a DMP the other night, right? Like, he in between, Sunday and Monday and that back-to-back against the Warriors and then the Bucks, he had 5 total minutes between 2 nights. And all 5 of those minutes were in the Golden State game. And, like even, Hamidou Diallo is starting to earn a little bit more, minutes in the rotation with his defensive effort, right? Like, I think a lot of it is, like you said, his evaluation. And I think a lot of where you're going to see that is going to be tweaking. And I think therefore, I think a lot of those decisions, like when we talk about like what could they do at the trade deadline, I think a lot of those decisions could potentially be made around that, right? So like I don't know if Detroit's going to go into like the trade deadline, like I don't think they're going to go in as sellers. I don't know if they're necessarily going to go in as like big buyers either. I think a lot of that's going to depend on, to be honest with you, I think a lot of that's going to depend on like some of what we talked about before, like the Victor Wembanyama stuff, like what teams could be tanking, who could be available, you know what I mean? But like, I don't think Troy Weaver is going to like make any decisions based on like our record this season, right? I think it's going to be rather like what players are showing to shine in those minutes, what players are showing to earn their spots in the rotation. Like I think those are going to be the things, like you said, like that evaluation is going to be what he's going to make his decisions off of.
And you brought it up in the beginning. You see Stewart going out there. Did they make it easy for Stu? No. Who did they make it easy for? Really was Killian. They cleared the deck of all the people behind him that could push him. They really did, and said, "This is your spot to run the bench." Then they went to Stu and they said, "Hey, Stu, you starter. Bagley's here. Hey, Stu, you the starter. Duran's here. Hey, Stu, you the starter. We're gonna just throw in a sprinkle of Noel." And now and Bojan at the 4-2, right?
They went out of their way to make it work with Killian for so long. They were like, they put him in the starting lineup at the beginning when perhaps he wasn't ready to be. And, they kind of kept him in the starting lineup throughout the season last year when they probably should have moved him to the bench sooner. And then, like you said, that move to the bench was kind of that opportunity and kind of catered to Killian of being like, hey, this is your unit. This is your opportunity to go out against lesser talent and really show what you got. And even then, we're not seeing it.
And then they even traded. You had the fans that could have said, "Bring up Saban Lee." Troy cleared that deck as well. Get out of here, and I'm going to actually renew your contract before the season's. I'm gonna go and pick up your option. He picked up his option. He traded everybody that was behind Killian, and now it's on him to be able to go and attack that. And I do, I'm grateful for the panel that I talk basketball with, because it's not just about hot takes and then letting those hot takes be what continues to sizzle. If we have a hot take, I know that there's going to be conversation on this panel that's going to make it, that's going to bring it back to sense, logic, reason. You have to wait things out. I do want to see Killian Hayes with those bigs, because people put those lineups earlier. One of the things that will fix this team is just getting healthy. That will help this team tremendously. Those lineups that we're able to play when Alec Burks and Marvin Bagley gets back, the 2 big lineups that we're able to play with 3-guard rotations. The reason why we can't really go 3-guard rotations is because they run that out there sometimes with 5 players. You know what I'm saying? They run it out there all small. When you get Bagley back, when you get, Noel back into conditioning, like we talked about with Bagley, he was not in basketball shape. Noel is not in basketball shape, people. When you get him back to be able to be a big off the bench, that 4th big, you know what I mean? Then is where we look at this team being able to truly assess who Killian Hayes is. Now, would we want him to have been able to put on a little bit more from an individual or ISO standpoint? I thought he had that ability, but Steve was right. He's a pick and roll dominant player, and without those types of bigs, you got to build your team that way. Then those types of players are going to look like they're struggling. He is not Cade Cunningham on any level. Cade is him. He's not Jaden Ivey on any level, who can absolutely blow past a good defender. I'm just going to run past you. One hezzy from Ivy has looked detrimentally devastating to the defense, and the Bucks figured out something. You're right on that, Steve. The first game from the Bucks to the second game for the Bucks for Jaden Ivey, they changed up how they shaded him. And Coach Casey talked about that too with Ivy and Cade. I've been telling people this all summer. I even told the Knicks scouts, Sean, the scouts we met at the game. Yeah. I told them guys, they're pinching. These defense, they don't even care to actually boss up against them. They're just pinching the elbows. They're pinching the tops of the keys. And for lesser players, when you're a Killian and you actually know, I can get around my guy here, even if it's a weak pick, but then they do soft pinches, he looks like a deer in headlights sometimes, like, whoa, where to go? Cade has just simply shot over it. Cade hasn't been taking wide open mid-ranges like he was last year when he's coming off of Marvin Bagley's screens. Look at the shots he's taking. And people are saying, yo, this boy is taking shots like he CP3 and Kobe in the mid-range. These aren't open shots he's taking. So when you got people of kind of lesser degree or lesser skill, they just can't do it. That's one thing that Ivy has to figure out. As defenses know, just kind of, press up on him. He does have speed, but if you have your back wall just form an effing wall, his mid-range is not it right now. And that got to Ivy in that last Bucks game. He took a couple mid-range shots that was just like, or had a couple chances at looks that he just didn't take. And that's for maturation purposes. You want to see him get it. But for as limited as his mid-range is, he still is making an impact on offense. He's still making an impact on defense. It's not perfect, but it's just like he's a rookie. Killian, get it together, buddy. You know what I mean? Like, I know he's one of our main topics tonight. I know he's not one of our main fixes. He's not going to be the fix of the Pistons. He's somebody that could add a lot. He's a 7th pick in the first round. He's a lottery pick. This is somebody we're supposed to be able to depend on, period. Just like we believe we're supposed to be able to depend on Stu and Bay, who were picked a lot further down the draft than Killian Hayes. What anything other than like health and Killian Hayes that you guys believe can help this team?
Well, I want to talk about the fix. Like, what do we mean fix? Do we mean to win more games, or do we mean to lose more games? Because you can do the fix either way, right? Like, the
Stick
fix,
to it. Whatever you think it is. Now you have me intrigued.
If they really want to make another run at like Wembanyama Scoot, right, then the fix is to try out all these small ball lineups, right? I have trouble saying this, but Bojan is a sieve on defense. For as great as he is on offense, like, if you want to play a drinking game like you like those, there's 2 ones that will get you drunk every time. It's how many times that Bojan just gets run through or run around on defense. And the other one is how many times does Jaden Ivey hit the floor and then complain to the refs. So, yeah, those are 2
I
ones.
love Jaden Ivey with all my heart. But you want to talk about somebody who took Tayshaun Prince level kind of this to the next level? That's the evolution, bro.
Yeah.
You know what's a drinking game that you would be parched in, though, Steve?
What's that?
If you took a shot for every time that Bojan missed one.
Yeah,
he's never missed a shot. It's never happened.
Yeah.
If you showed me footage of him missing a shot, I'd say that footage is doctored. It's fake news.
You'd be sitting there like,
yeah, just waiting.
Like, man, my cup is running over. Like this. Like this, bro.
And I think the thing is, though, too, like, I think no matter what, I think we're gonna see Detroit, no matter what, end up around that conversation, right? Yeah, I mean, like, reality is like we've seen. I think we can say that it's both true that the Pistons look significantly better than they did before, right? Like, I think they look improved over last season in multiple different ways. Mm-hmm. It can also be true that the Pistons are still in the bottom 4 or bottom 6 of the standings at this current time. And so if things were to continue to go at this pace, we still might be in the Victor Wembanyama case. Are you like and like we even saw,
perfect equilibrium is what you just stated. That's where Piston fans should be like, yo, we're there.
And the other thing too is remember, like last season we saw I forgot which team. Let's even say the Cade CunningHIM lottery, right? The Cleveland Cavaliers snuck into the top 3. They weren't supposed to be a top 3 team. They did not have top 3 odds. I think they were supposed to be around like 8 or 7, if I remember correctly. So the way that the current lottery system works, you don't necessarily have to be like right. Like you don't necessarily have to get those top 3 odds. I mean, we even saw last year, Pistons had top 3 odds. You got the 5th pick. You got lucky because Jaden Ivey was there, but still, right? Like, that's just the reality of the situation is like, like Steve said, you could position yourself, and try to be more in that Victor Wembanyama case and improve your lottery odds. And if at a certain point they were to make that decision, listen, at a certain point, I can't argue with it just from the generational all-time talent that Victor Wembanyama is. And I understand like the implications financially and from a basketball standpoint, it would mean to be in that conversation. However, I also feel like the Pistons don't necessarily have to change their course very much and could still end up in that conversation. So I would just say, go try to win games. Like, don't let that, make you afraid of winning, right? Like, I think we've even seen like Utah, even though like their play could potentially be removing themselves from the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, there's still a silver lining of they're 6-3. Like, there's things to build off here. Like Lauri Markkanen, did anyone expect him to be in the MVP conversation?
Me, but that's only because I work here in Arizona, so I'm a homer.
But like, but like that was gonna be the only way you expected it, is if you were a homer. No offense, but that was the only way.
Point taken.
Yeah, and this is what we asked for fans for years during the down years, when this team was getting punked in every single way, when they were hiring like basically dead on arrival coaches, when their interims were interims. You know what I mean? Like, we were saying, can't y'all, we will support losing, we will show up, we will this, that, and the other if you do it the right way, if you rebuild the right way. We said tear down to the studs. We know that a young team is going to look rough. We get that, but we'll be able to believe. Well, that's what we are. We just don't understand it. And honestly, I believe this is the only year that we'll be able to sit here and realistically look at it as an evaluation year. Next year is not a year that we can sit here or should be able to sit here and have this type of a conversation. This is the only year in this rebuild or restoration where it makes sense. When you have a player like Cade, when you have a player like the potential of Ivy and Duran, when you have the young guys like Stewart and Sadiq Bey, and you're able to then go out there and pluck some strategic signings like Marvin Bagley and Bojan, and then you're going to add to that however many freakishly millions of dollars you have in cap space next year. Even though you signed Bojan, you still are one of the top teams with cap space next year, and you're adding multiple draft picks. Does anybody think he's not coming away with at least 2 first rounders again? Think about that. He's going to come away with 2 first rounders. We said this last year. That's a lot added to this team. So it's like, this is the year that as a fan, I would tell people, look at this more from your evaluation. Look at this, put on your GM hat, more of all right, who's going to be here, who's not. Look at this from, hey, let's look at the steps that these young players are taking. Well, what is Cade? Is Cade going to be what we want to see? Is Cade going to be at least all-star worthy this year? You know what I'm saying? Is Isaiah Stewart going to be able to average a double-double? Is he going to be able to expand this game on a perimeter? These are things that we actually want to see these guys do. Sadiq Bey, is he going to be able to be as versatile? Because what I love is the fact that they're able to run a similar style with the bench players and Sadiq. When you have Cade, Bojan, and Ivy, the hope is that you can run similar sets with Hami, Killian, and Sadiq when Sadiq plays heavier minutes. And Casey talked about that, getting his usage up with the bench, because Sadiq is at his best when his usage is up. Period. He can fit into anything and swing it right and try and play hard and all that, but he's best when his usage rate is up. And so I like the fact that they have that ability if these guys will get out of their own way. What you saying, bro?
I was just saying he looked lost in the first couple of games with that adjustment with Bojan. And I think that was the big thing, is just you have 2 guys that are both just, high volume, shooters that can both get streaky, right? And I think, and it's crazy because it's like you're looking at like, I know even people are saying like Bojan's like he's 34, he's like, like past his prime. Like the crazy thing is like he might be past his prime, he might be 34. He's averaging career highs. Like he's playing his best basketball of his career right now. Like he's apexing right now. That's
far cry from what it used to be. We got, for no matter if he ended as Mattress Leg Blake, for once with Bojan and Blake Griffin, we signed these guys towards the end of their careers, and they actually put up better stats than like Chris Webber and some of these older, Tracy McGrady, Allen Iverson.
Careful.
Sorry, Joe.
No, Chris Webber was a great signing. Totally a good replacement for Ben Wallace. Filled that need in every way. We're sorry, Joe. That worked out splendidly. He wasn't on the court at all the night that LeBron scored like 26 in the second half.
Yeah, he's actually on the phone trying to hire 2 new dead on arrival coaches. So
he wants
Yeah.
to bring back. He wants to bring back Lawrence.
Cooster's
Frank.
on one line, and I'm not sure who else is on the other line.
He's bringing back. He wants to bring back Lawrence Frank.
Yeah, and I see people in the comments talking about Bojan. Hey, listen, guys, Bojan serves multiple purposes. Either a bench player for a contending team, like seriously, like you got to think in 1 or 2 years. So in 2 years, if he's still on his team and they're contending, he's probably not starting at the 4. That's not going to happen. But Troy knows that. That's why I said this year's evaluation year. You need that guy in the lineup for Cade, because if you can't run pick and rolls, who is he passing to? The whole defense is going to know he ain't passing to nobody. Just key in on Cade, make it tough for him. That's the thing. So for right now, for basketball purposes of being able to run any semblance of an offense, you got to have him in that starting lineup, and he actually deserves to be there right now based on the makeup of this team.
I'm glad you brought up the playoff thing. Does anybody remember on that Mavs title team, Peja Stojakovic was on that team, and he had one game where he just like put up like 30 or something, right? And he had moments like that. Like I could see Bojan doing that too. And I don't know that Peja ever did anything. I always figured he was on the Mavs team.
That or you remember on the Orlando Magic team, Hito Turkoglu?
Hito Turkoglu. You probably got one, guys. Don't take my Hito and my Peja from me, man.
Can I say, by the way, I just remember like 2 distinct summers like in my childhood in the NBA. One being when LeBron had the decision, and like them talking about like how big of a deal that was and like the ramifications it had throughout the league. And then I remember one summer when the biggest story was Hito Turkoglu going to the Toronto Raptors. I remember watching like analysts like, dude, they were trying to pretend that this was a big deal. And they were like, whoa, Hito Turkoglu is like one of the top 16 power forwards in the NBA. Like, this is massive. And it's like, I don't even remember like anything he did in a Raptors uniform.
He was great at what he did, but he was just below the great players. So it was like, he's gonna get a little fanfare, but it was like, come on, guys. He's not LeBron, you know what I'm saying? And I tried to be a LeBron hater, but I remember that, dog. It was funny. No, because I was salty. I remember during that time, like, man, why can't we get guys like that?
Dude, he literally in his last year in Orlando, so like in his like 2 years in Orlando, and he was like 28 and 29, he averaged 19.5 points and then 17 points a game. And then right when he got to Toronto, literally that year, averaged 11 points a game and just immediately started to suck.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah, and RB the baller, that was another point I was going to say, is like there are multiple ways. There's multiple reasons why he's on the squad. And it's the same reason why Jeremy Grant was. He's either going to keep him because he sees the way that he can fit if nobody's going to give the best deal. And he's not just going – Troy is not selling short. That's what I love about it, is that Troy's not the type of guy who's bluffing without actual assets. You know, those guys who say, you want this deal, and if not, then bloom. But then you're hurting yourself. Troy is not doing that. Bojan will help this team. He's not afraid to say, hey, you know what? Your fit is going to be best this way if you're going to be on this squad. But he's not going to say no to 2 first-round picks. He's not going to say no to if the draft is if they're in the draft, just like with Jeremy Grant, and their player that they have rated high is right there, and all it takes is a bogey, they're going to do that. They will do that. So, yeah, you know, Bojan serves multiple purposes. He's either going to be within the system because he runs it perfectly off the bench, or as a trade asset. But it's a brilliant thing to have. How did Troy upgrade his trade asset? Think about how good of a trade asset Jeremy Grant became. How much better will Bojan be to an actual contender? Who knows? We need somebody who could just throw the ball into the ocean every single time they shoot.
Can we just
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to really quickly say, can we just point out the fact that the money that we had, like this contract that we have with Bojan Bogdanovic, this started as Mason Plumlee. Can we point that out? Like, it literally, like,
Troy's a madman.
You ever heard of the game Bigger and Better, where like you take like an inanimate object and you like flip it and you try to have something big at the end? He essentially took like some like belly button lint that he found in like the cracks of the couch and turned it into like an Xbox 360. That's pretty much what he did, and I'm impressed.
I love that you said that, bro, because that's what I had to do to get my Xbox 360. Every game I can find, GameStop was like, Nintendo games? I need this Xbox 360. I drove my bike to the mall, bro. Like, I'm so glad you said that.
Will you does GameStop take bikes? Hey, if you think about it, that's the original game. That's the original platform, the bicycle.
You
Move
take this
over,
bike.
Xbox.
Oh shoot, Steve, what was you gonna say, bro?
No, one last thing on this. What's the fix? I think we're forgetting Bojan got here like days before training camp started. Like it was like barely any time.
Yeah,
Ivy's brand new rookie. And then there's still the questions of him and Cade like trying to figure out their offense. The first couple games, I was really frustrated because the offense is really like this take your turn. Like here, Ivy's going to do something. Cade, go stand over here. Cade's going to do stuff here. Ivy, go stand over there. Like that stuff is going to work itself out. I think that's more the fix is these guys are still figuring out how to play with each other. And oh, by the way, you've only had 2 available centers this whole time. First, it was Duran and Stu. You can't play them together, even though you want to. You need
1.5 centers.
there. Yeah, exactly. And now Duran got hurt, so now it really is 1.5 center because Noel, they said, was a break glass in case of emergency type of thing. He looks kind of like he's still hurt, and like you said, maybe he's not in basketball shape yet. So I think that's if they're going to win more games, that's the fix is just getting used to playing with each other.
Yep. And I with this one with Chuck, so what does Weaver make Bojan into? That is going to be the most interesting thing because he made Trey Lyles into Marvin Bagley. There's some of the trades he's done. I'm just like, how?
Right.
He turned Jeremy Grant into what?
Well,
Multiple
and even
players and Jalen Duran? How?
even if he just let's just say he just keeps Bojan, and let's just say he plays as a Piston until like his contract ends. Like, let's say that like the plans to have him beyond this. Like, let's say that scenario happens because right now, because I would say like as far as role player, I'd trade. Come on, man. You can't. There's not even the compatible games for the 360. Like, are you getting a controller? Like, if you threw in a second controller, I'd consider it anyway. But no, in all seriousness, I think
Tails or Killian Hayes.
Oh my gosh, man.
I'm sorry, in all serious, Sean.
I lost my train of thought. I'm gonna level with you. It's completely gone. Whatever I was gonna say, that just broke me.
Oh my goodness. Chuck said he wants you to admit your man crush for Bojan.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. No, yeah, you're not wrong. Like I think this went under the radar, and I'm quite bummed because I also made a post when Bojan's extension was announced, and it did not get a lot of acknowledgement, and I think it needs to be. I tweeted this like 2 minutes after the news broke. Kool-Aid, if you'll share my screen.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna come.
That was my response. So you might have something there, Chuck.
Sean, take us out, bro. I think that's it.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the We appreciate you all being here each and every week. If you like this podcast, if you like what we do here, covering all things Detroit Pistons, breaking it down in a way that no one else can, a way no one else is, and a way that no one else will, be sure you subscribe. Dude, I mean, we could go all night, brother. That's just how we are. But believe me, man, we'll be having a whole lot of stuff coming very soon. By the way, be sure you go check out Resball over on Twitter. Be sure you're following Steve as well at Burke Worldwide. Also, be sure you're following my guy Brandon, aka Detroit Kool-Aid, at Detroit Kool-Aid. And if you're feeling oh so charitable and have another follow to give away, you can go follow me at Sean Half Court. But that's going to do it for today, folks. Thank you for tuning in. And one more thing, Kool-Aid and the Murph coming soon.
It is coming soon. And you know what, Sue? On Kool-Aid and the Murph, That's where you're gonna see the characters, guys. That's where you will see the characters.
Characters.
We're gonna have some fun, brother.
What? Are they talking to guys? That was a traumatic event for me. Okay, when this freak just took over my camera with the mask and just like I have to figure out my tech stuff because they hacked into my system there. Whatever happened, you know,
Yeah.
it was
I don't know. I
terrifying.
keep seeing this Batman stuff. I have no idea what people are talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you mean?
I mean, you just don't hide it at all. You'll just put it on like with the camera.
What are you talking about? Hey, Bruce.
Oh my gosh. Thank
We're on
y'all
first
for
name
tuning in.
basis, like Steve and Joe.
Thank y'all so much for tuning in. We appreciate and love y'all. The table talk wouldn't be what it is without our fourth member at the table, which is each and every one of you tuning in. Thank y'all for being here. We'll catch you guys next week on Woodward Pistons
And
Table
shout
Talk.
out to all the crew, man, from Lexi to Carl to everybody who's put in work in the past, man, as well as our Woodward Sports family. Hey, shout out, man. This was awesome tonight, actually. I'm glad we did this, man. So shout out to you guys for being here. Thank you, Sean, for closing us out, brother.
Absolutely, man.
Hey, shout out Weems. This was awesome. Peace out.